Humans brought goats to the Galapagos Islands for food. And somehow, those goats turned into an island-eating machine with horns that helped threaten giant tortoises. That is a strange career change, from backup dinner to ecological villain. The plan was not evil. It was actually very normal. Sailors, settlers, and people living far from easy supplies needed food that could survive rough islands. A goat looks perfect for that job. It eats almost anything, climbs almost anything, and looks at a dry volcanic hillside like, yes, this is fine, so people brought goats. A few animals, a practical food source, simple, tiny problem. The goats did not read the plan. The Galapagos are not normal islands. They are isolated volcanic islands where plants and animals evolved in their own strange little world. Giant tortoises moved slowly through the landscape. Land iguanas used the same dry terrain. Plants grew under island rules, with island pressure at island speed. Then the goats arrived like walking lawnmowers with opinions. And to a goat, the question is never, am I supposed to be here? The question is, can I eat this? On the Galapagos, the answer was often yes. Goats ate grasses, shrubs, young trees, cactus, and other plants native animals depended on. Hillsides lost cover. Tortoise habitat got worse. Food that had belonged to island animals was now being chewed by animals. Humans had dropped into the story. The goats were not plotting. They were not sitting on lava rocks making villain speeches. They were just very good at being goats. That was the danger. One goat looks harmless. A few goats look manageable. But thousands of goats become a moving appetite. And on islands with few natural controls, that appetite can spread faster than the land can recover. At first, the human idea was clean. Bring a useful animal and get reliable meat in a hard place. But the hidden crack was this. The same traits that made goats useful to humans made them dangerous to the islands. Tough, flexible, hungry, good at surviving, good at reproducing. In one setting, that is a checklist for useful livestock. In the wrong setting, that is a disaster with hooves. And the backfire did not politely stay near the village. Goats spread across islands like Isabela, Santiago, and Pinta. They moved through rough lava, volcanic slopes, thick vegetation, and remote places where people could not simply walk in, wave their arms, and say, "Okay, everyone out." The goats had the better boots. They could climb, they could hide, they could live where people struggled to move. By the time conservation teams understood the scale of the problem, the islands were not dealing with a food supply anymore. They were dealing with an invasion. So the human response became much bigger than the original mistake. Project Isabela was launched to restore damaged island ecosystems by removing invasive mammals, especially goats. This was not a small cleanup. This was not one farmer fixing one fence. This was one of the biggest island restoration efforts ever attempted, with teams on the ground, helicopters in the air, dogs searching through the terrain, and radio tracking guiding the final stages. And then came the weirdest tool in the whole story, Judas goats. A Judas goat is a goat used to betray other goats, which sounds like farm gossip that got too serious, but it was real conservation strategy. The idea was simple and strangely clever. Goats are social. A lone goat often looks for other goats. So teams sterilized selected goats, fitted them with radio collars, and released them back onto the islands. Then the collared goat would go looking for hidden groups. Humans followed the signal. The Judas goat found the herd, and the herd was removed. It is cold. It is clever. It is also what happens when a simple mistake becomes a giant logistics problem with helicopters and trader goats. Because the hardest part of removing an invasive species is not always the first huge wave, it is the last few survivors. If even a small number of goats remain, they can rebuild the population, and the same hillsides start filling with goats again. One missed goat can become a future herd. That is the scary part. The concept here is invasive species. When an organism is introduced somewhere it did not evolve, spreads, and causes harm in its new home. But the deeper pattern is even simpler. A thing can be useful in one place and harmful in another. Rabbits brought to Australia seemed useful at first, and then they exploded across the landscape. Cane toads brought to fight pests became pests themselves. Even a plant moved for decoration can escape a garden and start crowding out native life. The object is not magical. The place matters. Put the wrong living thing in the wrong place, and the land may reward exactly the behavior you cannot afford. That is what happened with the goats. They were brought because they were tough, hungry, and hard to kill. Then everyone had to deal with the fact that they were tough, hungry, and hard to remove. And the rare part is that the story did get a repair chapter. After goats were removed from key islands, vegetation began coming back. Young plants returned. Tortoise habitat improved. The land started to heal. But look at the price of that healing. The easy part was opening the gate. The hard part was closing the island. So the lesson is not goats are bad. Goats are goats. The lesson is, before you add a useful thing to a delicate place, ask what it will become when nobody is controlling it. Because sometimes a backup food supply looks around, finds a volcano full of snacks, and turns into the problem everyone has to chase for years. If you liked this one, the next video is right here. Go watch that. And as always, let me know what you think down below. Thanks for watching, dummies. I'll see you in the next one.